Welcome to another Fighter Stance podcast. I am Patrick Miller. I am the head instructor for Gracie Cedar Park, and I run Heroes Jiu-Jitsu. I'm joined today by Matt Smith.
I'm Matt Smith. I'm the director here at Sheepdog Response, and we're joined by my good friend for the second part in this two-part series on Jeff Tiegs. I'm going to start it off by saying, Jeff, I was in Vegas this year in January and ran into Brian Callen. You guys know Brian Callen, very talented comedian, and he did not hesitate to drop your name a lot. That's how you know that Jeff Tiegs is legit. Brian Callen's dropping his name.
So I know that you guys listen to the podcast, so you know that I love defense soaps and defense wipes. They also have a large array of other products. Like we have 2 foot washing stations out at the mats. So it's not just soap and it's not just wipes. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. So make sure you guys go check out their website and get some of the other products as well as your defense wipes and your defense soap.
Is it though? Does Brian not drop? Does he not drop names?
He's such a great guy, man.
No.
He's such an awesome dude.
So I was super impressed. I got introduced to Brian and had an opportunity to go see him. I had to go to him, of course, to his podcast. It was a total blast. But here's the story that I wanted to tell, Bri, okay? So I go to his house, all right, beautiful house, and then he says, hey, jump in with me, and we'll go to Calabasas to where they do the podcast. Mm-hmm. So I park my vehicle at his house, and we drive to Calabasas, which is like, I don't know, it's a 40-minute drive or something like that. So we go, we do the podcast. It was a total blast. I think the world of the guy. He's just brilliant.
He's a great guy.
And then we go get some lunch, and then he says, oh, hey, man, I forgot. I've got a meeting after this. You got to fucking Uber back home. And I'm like, bro.
From nowhere?
I think it was a $70 Uber from Calabasas. I'm like, hey, yeah, I was being nice, Bri. But it's like, dude, you could have told me, like, first of all, I could have driven my own car. But anyway, yeah, I think the world of him.
Yeah, he's great.
Impressive.
Hilarious comedian, and whenever he does those, like he was in like The Hangover. Yeah, and he was the guy at the wedding. So funny, dude. So funny.
We went and saw him we in the crew, all the crew actually from Sheepdog went and watched him at Cap City last time he was there.
Yeah,
in Stitches, and we got to hang out with him, and I've been to the range with him a couple times. It was just fun.
Well, I'm going to the range with him. Was that also hilarious?
Oh my god, dude! Nothing's fucking serious. Like I mean, it's hard not to have a good time. You're like, shit, I'm supposed to be serious right now. You're like, but I'm at Stitches when I'm around.
I'm going to put this out there for the world because I need to reach out to Brian. So we're going to talk about Skull Games, the counter-trafficking nonprofit we do. But yeah, I've been trying to come up with different ways to fund Skull Games. Mm-hmm. And there's a thing out there called Spook Stock. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that, where these bands, a couple of bands come and all these guys come and it's kind of a secret little party. So
is that like a Halloween thing or why is it called that?
Because I'm sorry. Because the funding goes to the fallen from CIA fallen to special warriors. So that's where the spook.
Yeah, I was like,
CIA. That's where the spook comes from.
I was like, they do this at Halloween every year. This sounds cool.
But it becomes like the cool guy thing. Like you know, like hey, you going to Spook Stock this week? You know, it's kind of an invite thing only. Oh. So Brian, I'm going to reach out to you because I think what we need to do is some sort of where it's like a couple of comedians where it becomes the place to be as a fundraiser for Skull Games. You know what I mean? Where it's like, cool. Hey, you know, we meet somewhere, it's invite only. You pay a shit ton of money to come in.
People like secret parties.
You get to hang out with us. Maybe we'll do a couple fights or something.
Yeah.
So I need to reach out and hit you guys up on that. Okay. I'm sick of trying to beg for money.
Yeah, it's hard, man.
And we got the team.
Yeah.
You know?
You got a great team. We've been working with them for a couple of days here. It's awesome to have Jeff here. We hosted, the reason the impetus for this is Jeff is here with his team. We hosted Skull Games here. He agreed he was teaching jiu-jitsu, so he's out on the mats today. Then we come straight in here for podcasts. The rest of his team's out there training. He's kind of here sharing information for us. So if you don't know about Skull Games, go check out Skull Games. Give generously. That's a great organization that does great things. It stops human trafficking, stop kids and women from getting trafficked. I mean, everybody from all ages and genders who are running through the trafficking system. I won't steal your thunder, but he knows way more about it than I do. But they do an amazing service, and they do it for altruistic reasons. I believe that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get through some more of your backstory, and then closer to the end, like I really want to dive into the Skull Games thing. So for this podcast, I specifically didn't watch anything on you because I wanted you to tell it, and then I did a little bit of research on the Skull Games, but I wanted to come from a perspective of someone who doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then I specifically
that's a pretty good angle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do shit for this because I think it's the best decision.
I was like, you
did say that. And then I specifically told him all things that weren't true about you.
Yeah. So now whenever you say something, I'm like,
so how long you been a SEAL?
Yeah. Was it difficult balancing that ball on your head?
Yeah.
So we ended the last podcast of them trying to give you demo because you had a calculator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and again, I think we're bookending these things, right? Where we talked about skull games, and all of this matters. Like who the American public paid for to create with their US dollars is. I'm still paying you back.
Nice.
And those skills.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Those skills that we learned and were taught and were instilled in us, we've just taken now. And again, you're applying. It was so fun to see, dude. I didn't
want to throw it away. I was the same way at retirement. I was like, dude, this is my life. I love doing this. There's
do
a
you
reason I
not
stay
still
doing
feel
it,
like
man.
a Green Beret?
Yeah.
I still feel like a Green Beret. I don't wear the funny hat.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I don't used to.
I don't wear it.
Yeah.
But I didn't like wearing it when I had to. But
and I don't have to report. I don't need. I can go to the sound of the gunfire. If I think that problem needs to be fixed, I get my passport stamped and I go to it.
Yeah. So one of the funny things about Matt Smith is, so working here, like I've been able to go to the range with him when we do like a Protector 1, and he's still a Green Beret.
Yeah.
He's still an NCO because
Yeah.
he gets out there with his whistle and people are shooting and he goes off every once in a while and he's doing his instruction. I'm like, oh yeah, that was an NCO. 100%.
It's edifying for me. A friend of mine used the term of operator therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And just to hang out with you guys again, the jiu-jitsu community has a lot of that, but just the way you talk, the way you walk, Yako, it was interesting how you were talking about
like a warm blanket,
the pheromones and how like in combat and in jiu-jitsu, how you're literally exchanging energy for each other that your body remembers, so that's part of it, but it's so comforting to me again, I call it operator therapy. I live up in Oregon now. And it's a beautiful place and there's wonderful people there, but there aren't a lot of us. And, to be able to come and rub elbows and kind of reminisce and just kind of see like, oh, there's dudes like me out here.
Yeah.
Nice.
You had to go to the greatest state or the greatest country in the world, Texas. So
yeah.
There's that.
Yeah. So let's see. So when we got back from Panama, Desert Storm kicked off a short time after that. So that was December of '89. I think it was about a year later. I don't remember the exact time frame. And we didn't go. I was in Alpha Company 3rd Platoon. Alpha Company 1st Platoon went with Matt Larson. I remember Matt going.
Man.
And then one of the other companies, I can't remember if it was B or C company. So we didn't go. They were there for months. We ended up doing that show of force mission where we jumped in and basically it was kind of like, hey, we're showing you Saddam, from what I understand it. Again, not at the time, but since then, it's like, hey, Saddam, like, cool your jets, because here's what we can do if we want to, kind of a thing, Yeah. So there wasn't any like real combat that I saw. A couple guys had done some certain things. So that now bleeds into '92. I had extended to try out for Delta. So my contract was from '87 to '91, 4 years, right? Yeah, 4 years. And I extended a year to try out for Delta.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a Best Ranger competition that I was training up for, which perfectly blended right into Delta selection. So that was like the plan,
Yeah, the train up's probably pretty similar.
Exactly. Train up pretty similar.
Certainly
so
helps.
I end up finding out that they didn't accept my eyes where they were going to be corrected. So I wasn't allowed to even go to selection.
Yeah.
So now I'm the angry Ranger, right? I'm like, I can't get what I want. You know what I mean? Screw these guys.
We like everything about you, but your stupid eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I ended up getting out, and I kept waiting and trying to finagle. And again, back then, you remember you could re-enlist with 1 day on your contract.
That's right.
You could re-enlist.
Yeah.
Very different.
Did you have anything done, or you just wore glasses?
I wore glasses, and,
Okay.
and there was a waiver for scuba school. There was a waiver for sniper school. Like there were waivers
Yeah, you could
available.
waive some
and
things.
I thought, well, for sure, this is just a waiver, And I won't go into that's another story for another time. I had Doc Donovan. Do you remember old Doc Donovan from 1st Ranger Battalion, Vietnam?
I'm not sure. I might have met him.
You don't know him? Oh,
I might have
he was
met
a
him.
legend with us. He might have changed my corrected my eyes on paper. That kind of got busted for. So anyway, it's a long story. I didn't get. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I did 5 years. I loved it. I wasn't sure what else I wanted to do. So I got out to go to college, and in this time I'm still running, again, the same kind of times and all that. So I go to college. I start out at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. So it was just a short jump from Savannah to Wilmington. My wife and I loved living on the beach.
Oh, that's nice.
And I meet the coach and say, hey, I'm an athlete. I'm training for triathlons. You mind if I, kind of work out with your team? He said, hey, we have a time trial. Why don't you come check it out? So I run the time trial, and I take like second or third on the team.
Whoa,
and I'm
nice.
like, and so now I'm understanding there's different levels of Division I.
Yeah.
Because I came from Wisconsin. University of Wisconsin was like the national champion.
Yeah, it's big.
So you took second or third
in the time trial for the varsity
out of like,
D1. Yeah.
Out of like 3 people?
Yeah. So, but I didn't realize like Division I running, it's all different levels. I mean, it's just like any, like, you've got 5, 8, 10 schools that are like untouchable. And then there's the rest of us kind of journeymen working through it. So next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I can go to school. I end up running on a scholarship.
Nice.
But always intended to go to a bigger school.
But you didn't expect to get that scholarship.
No.
You were like, I want to do triathlons.
That's the score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was because tries again 92 tries were just kind of getting big, and I was starting to have some success, and I was like, hey, maybe I can.
Yeah, that's
maybe I
like
can
going
make
right
some
into
money.
triathlon heyday. That they got real big after that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's that big? I won't go into it, but there's a Mark something, the really big triathlete that won a bunch.
Yeah, Mark Allen, Dave Scott, Mark Allen.
Yeah, from
book plug, Iron War. Have you read Iron War?
No, I haven't.
Iron War. It's Dave Scott and Mark Allen because they went head to head a couple times in Iron Man. Incredible book.
I remember he's famous because he didn't ride aero bikes; he just rode regular bikes and crushed it.
Unreal.
So doing triathlons. So you grew up in like Wisconsin. So did you do a lot of swimming, or is that something?
You just stumbled into a story. So in Wisconsin, I do a triathlon. This is so again, I graduated in 87. So maybe this is 80. I don't know. It's probably 86, 85, 86. Yeah, 85, 86. I do a triathlon. Okay, and I come out of the water, and the women are ripping off their bathing suits and putting on their cycling clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
listening.
And what am I, like 15? So I'm coming out of the water, and like, dude, I had never, other than my mom and sister, I'd never seen a naked woman before. So I'm coming out of the water, and there's like,
they were going
naked,
buck. They were just going
like buck.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I'm like,
this is before technology.
Yeah. So,
they didn't care.
again, this
The
is
athletes
80s triathlon, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what the, So I get back to school, and I tell my buddies, I'm like,
you got to do a
I found
triathlon,
the
bro.
coolest sport you've ever heard of.
Just make it to the end of the swim, bro. I swear, it'll be so worth it.
So I got like 5 or 6 dudes. They can't swim.
You got them to do it.
Again, dude, right. You're 15 years old. You're like, so I'm going to see naked women?
Yeah, I'll doggy paddle 2 fucking miles. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I like to party. Let's do this.
No, you don't party. I party.
Yeah.
So we get out of the water. And I remember, I think it was Lake Michigan. It was choppy. Like it was a terrible swim. I think like 2 of my buddies.
They still run
got
one
like
up there.
Bailed out. Yeah, And then when you come out of the water, the men went this way and the women went this way.
Oh.
And there was a
divider,
plywood divider.
They put it.
Jeff's responsible.
My buddies were so mad.
Jeff Tiegs is responsible for the Iron Man divider.
Yeah,
it's his fault.
Keep his cool. So that was that's your entry into triathlon, and you're like, I think I could do this.
Yeah.
Your buddies are so mad at you. You swim 2 miles.
And 2, like they probably had like those Huffy, the Huffy bikes. Like, you're gonna go 50 miles on this.
I wouldn't keep going. I'd be
two
like, I'm out.
Two of your buddies had a tandem bike.
I'd walk right out of there.
I remember that one. So I ended up doing that, and then I went out to Montana to train. So I'm starting to get, the Army days are over, so I'm really starting to focus on run. I'm getting a little bit thinner. I'm really focused on getting the right training. I'm getting faster. So we go out to Montana with a friend of mine, and we train at altitude. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come back and be a much better athlete. And I run into the coach from Montana State at a couple of summer races, and he says, I don't think this is legal, but he's like, hey, why don't you come race for us?
Ooh.
So and I always intended to run for a bigger university. They were a top 15. I think they were 12th or 15th in the country at the time. And we love the mountains, So
dude, Montana is
you went from
breathtaking,
the
bro.
to the mountains.
Yeah, and we had
Nice.
crafted this life that was rapidly falling apart. So I'm married, right? I got married in '89. We're talking '92, And you know, my wife and I rent this house, and it becomes like the track house. There's like 3 buddies, not track as in drug house.
I was about to say, there's
track,
a different definition.
The track cross country house.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 dudes living there with me and my wife.
Sounds hot.
And they're living the college life, right? Girls are coming and going, partying, and it was like my wife is totally cool, and she's the den mother, and she's just like, what are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. So like, we knew we needed a change.
Yeah.
And to this day, when we moved out to Montana, it was just us. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
We just moved out there, and it was her and I, and it wasn't the start of our marriage, but it was like a restart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was running out there, and this was clever. I don't know if they did it intentionally. I think they did. So they had an ROTC program. They didn't have one at UNC Wilmington. So there's I see these young kids just like burping around. You know what I mean? Like they don't know what they're doing as soldiers. And I'm like, hey, I can help you guys like learn to shoot and navigate and ruck and do all this kind of stuff. So I became this like kind of volunteer assistant to ROTC, and I had a beard, not quite as sexy as yours.
Thank you.
I got probably more.
Not impossible. Not possible.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, why don't you join as an MS4 as the senior, right? Why don't you come in as an MS4, and now you're officially with us, and you can kind of do all this stuff. And I tell you, man, they wrote me in, because as soon as I started training soldiers again, I was like,
you got the itch.
Oh,
that scratched it.
I like this, you know? And then again, what we talked about in the first one, man, there were all these men that poured into my life, and it was my opportunity to take that and just pour it into someone else's life. So I was getting into it, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to do ROTC, and I'll come back in as an officer. I can't go to Delta, but I think I can help figure out how to assess and select people. So back then, again, now you're talking 95-ish, is when this assessment and selections were starting to get professional. They're starting to bring in organizational psych and really working through the right guy theory. Yeah. So I'm starting to study that and get involved with that. And then if I get a phone call from a friend, he's like, hey man, the unit's taking corrective eye surgery. Ooh. And I tore up my old contract and said, send me infantry. And then I did a little summer camp up there at Fort Lewis. And was exposed to Lewis, and Stillicum, the little town out there, because I was still running in school. I had this drug deal. You know, I'm talking about the summer camp. All the officers go to that little.
I think they do it at. There's one of them they do it. I
think
Fort Knox.
Oh, I don't know now. Back then it was Bragg and Lewis.
Yeah, I think they do one at Knox now too, because I almost got roped into doing it. Yeah.
And so because I was still training, they'd let me run in the evenings.
Nice.
So I'd go across the hill there on North Fort and run. I remember calling my wife and saying, this is where we got to go. I know, you're going to love this. We're going to live in Stillicum and come up here. So we did. I got up to 2nd Ranger Battalion and worked there as a lieutenant. And then they wanted you to go, if you were light infantry lieutenant, they wanted you to go heavy as a captain. And I was not interested in that.
Yeah.
And then I was SF always piqued my interest, but it was a little bit shorter route. Because if you did to get the fastest route to Delta was to go to Korea, get your captain your captain time, and you could
do KD time.
Yeah, exactly. But we didn't really want to do that, so I knew it was a little bit of a slower route. But the small unit stuff in SF really interested me.
It does give you some advantage too when you get there, because if you do it, you're gonna do it. The same thing you do in Rangers, but they kind of do it at a slightly more mature. Again, I was never in Rangers, but from my experience with Rangers, it's at a slightly more mature level. Kind of loosen up the lead and let you kind of run your own show, and so that helps, because when you do get to the other side of the fence, there's many times that you're on your own accord and you're expected to do things like
equally. When I look at kind of basic in those Ranger days, creating me as a soldier, like you know the basics of a soldier, I do look at the Q course, specifically the 18 Alpha course, as creating a professional.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I was a captain by then. I knew this was going to be my profession, but it's really when I started to take it really seriously and study it and be like, okay, this is my profession.
When you actually made it to like a ODA, you were in Panama like for the States, like with everyone was like. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
what's this
again,
guy?
I'm still that guy who can run like you know what I mean.
yeah.
And by now I'm doing ultras. It's like
Yeah.
I had a big acumen. I was a mountaineer and all these things. So
Yeah.
Plus,
I had
you
a
were prior enlisted, so
Yeah,
every guy in the
exactly.
team
I
loves
had
that.
all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like when you
our
show,
team leaders
Yeah.
prior enlisted, like they feel a lot closer.
yeah,
to
when
him,
you you show up, they had to be like, "What's up with this guy?"
Yeah.
Been around.
Get a little bit of street cred right off the rip.
It was, and as luck would have it, the top ODA in 10th group needed a team leader, and
Nice.
they pulled me in. So
Nice.
the ODA that I went into was absolutely incredible. You know, and unfortunately, the truth that we know, you have 6 ODAs in a company.
Yep.
You've got 2 that are just like usually pretty amazing.
Yeah,
You've got 2 that can meet the standard, and then you've got 1 or 2 that are like,
they need some help.
should we disband you guys?
You know, it's just
What's happening? So this team was.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Typically, we know the 2, like, well, you know, one of the 2 top tier ones. It's like the dive team's always crushing it. They're
Yeah.
always in the top 2. Dude.
And in 10th group in Carson, it was the mountain teams.
Yeah, and the mountain.
'Cause,
teams,
yeah, that was when I
the
got
mountain
to-
teams are pretty switched on guys too because
Yeah.
they're good with gear. They work as a team all the time. They're doing remote stuff together, so they're pretty switched on.
In the
I don't want
mountains.
to point
Yeah.
fingers, but usually the mobility team is kind of like that's the one that usually winds up at the bottom of it. They'd be like, "We drive trucks." You're like, "Great."
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and I-
Well, they were great guys and great mobility.
Yeah,
teams.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hate to
Yeah,
disparage
I
them,
know.
Welcome
but
to
it's
the-
usually the mobility
it's
team.
Yeah, welcome to the
They're great.
conversation,
Yeah.
guys.
but so I
Hey,
showed
drive
up.
trucks.
I showed up with the bubble already from
Yeah,
from
having a
enlisted
bubble
days.
helps. Yeah,
But
for sure.
but dude, who wants to dive at altitude?
Nobody.
You know what I mean? So I was like, no.
I did,
wanted to do
and
a
it's
mountain.
not great, you're right.
Yeah. So I was on a mountain team. It was absolutely incredible. I barely did any time in peacetime. Like by the time I was done with the Q course and got to 10th group, we were already deploying to Kurdistan with the AFO team
nice.
and getting stuff prepped. So, you know, my experience, even when people ask me, do you know so-and-so from 10th? It's like, dude, I got there and we went to war.
So what year? 2003,
2002.
4, 2002?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I got there in the fall of 02.
So now we're getting towards my time frame.
Yeah.
Because I joined in 2003.
Yeah.
Oh,
And March of 03 was when the war kicked off.
Yep.
And we had
Yeah.
already been sitting in Iraq for a couple weeks before the
Yeah, that's right,
you know,
dude.
before
I
the-
tell that
before
story
the
all
war
the time.
kicked
I was
off.
like, I remember listening on a shortwave radio from sitting underneath a truck in some wadi in Iraq, in the western desert of Iraq, President Bush going, "You got 48 hours to do something where we're sending troops in." I'm like, wait,
We're already
I'm
here.
Yeah. And did we not plot this grid correctly?
We're all like, we're like, ooh, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, I get it.
I was
You're
right outside
already
Baghdad
getting it.
listening to that on our shortwave radio. Yeah.
when 173rd jumped in
Yeah.
to Bashir, I think
Yeah.
it's called.
Yeah.
We were sitting in
We're
lawn
gonna send
chairs.
troops, and if you
Yeah,
have
it was
48
so-
hours, we're already here.
Yeah, but dude,
Yeah, I went through a lot of that.
we're sitting there like drinking pina coladas on lawn chairs when the 173rd's doing a combat jump. Like they're telling us they're doing a combat jump, and we're like,
What
Why don't
for?
they just-
It was a historic thing because that unit jumped. They were the only
Yeah,
unit that
it-
jumped
it-
into
and it
Vietnam,
was.
and they wanted to like.
and I respect that.
Yeah.
But then
it was neat.
but we're sitting there like drinking our Red Bulls, not
Woo,
pina coladas,
like
drinking our
holding up
not Red
tin.
Bull. What was it? Rippets.
Rippets, dude.
drinking
Pallets of
our
Rippets,
rippets,
dude.
and all of a sudden like bullets start flying. And we're like, you know, I remember we get the ground and like we pull the launchers over your heads.
That'll
like,
work. That helps.
Who are they?
Yeah.
Who are they shooting at?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah.
So, I started rotating in and out of Iraq with that ODA, Samara, Kirkuk, just all over the place. Yeah, up in Kurdistan, absolutely incredible experience. 100% prepared me for moving over to the unit.
So how long were you in ODA before you went to selection?
End of 02 till 05. So probably just about 3 years.
So I know you're still working up for the like deployments, doing all that train up. Were you still running a lot at this time
I
too?
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you have guys in your ODA that ran with you too? Like were you guys all like?
So did you ever know Billy Dean, Arlie Dean?
Yes.
Billy Dean. So Billy Dean I met him as a lieutenant, and this guy was he was an incredible athlete, and we used to do adventure racing together. We raced for Solomon and a couple other companies, these adventure races and ultra running
When was this?
in the same time frame.
In his free time.
In my free
Patrick.
time, yeah.
Sorry. He's deploying to Iraq,
Yeah.
joined an ODA. Well, we were
But
sponsored by Solomon. We did
Yeah,
some
hours of
adventure
your
racing. So what our train up was, we just did adventure races,
Exactly.
and then we'd go to a range afterwards and just
I got
check
a
all the
story.
boxes.
I got a
trained from
story.
2 to 3 in the
I got a
morning.
story for you guys.
Yeah.
So that's how it was, you know. And Billy, amazing dude. And I'll circle back on Billy's story. So, Q course.
Yes.
Or SFAS.
Yes.
Okay. So Billy and I go to SFAS together. Okay. So the weekend before SFAS, we do.
That's the Special Forces selection.
Yeah, we do a 107-mile.
We do a race across Florida. So it's from one end. It ended in St. Augustine.
Wait, hold on.
Or whatever.
You said the weekend before, so like the Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You showed up on what, Monday?
Yeah, but you had a couple days to chill.
Well,
yeah.
You know,
No, whatever.
There's
Yeah,
the cattle
yeah,
car
yeah.
ride out there, so you got an hour to rest.
Yeah.
So
So we didn't recover our bodies through cold plunges like people do now.
Yeah, they
We
did.
David Goggins that shit.
Exactly.
We recovered by going to selection. By going to shit that usually kills people.
So we were sitting around. We just got bored, so we decided to do a race across Florida.
Yeah.
And then there was a recruiter there. It's like, hey, do you guys want to go to selection? We're like, yeah, sure. Sign us up. It's fine. No big deal.
It was a little bit more well thought out than that. Maybe not much more. So Billy and I we
Yeah, like what,
race.
3% more? It sounds
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I was spot on.
But those are the days, man, with the indestructible years where you could I'm down. Let's do this.
Yeah,
You know, like-
exactly. So
I never had those years.
And so Billy and I raced so much. We had this weird wavelength. And again, people that read my book, I talk about Billy in it. We fought together. He subsequently died on a freak rock fall in Mount Rainier a couple years ago. So we went to 10th group together. We went to selection together. We went to 10th group together. We went to Delta selection together. We went to Delta together. I mean, we were brothers, man. And this guy was remarkable. But he's up in heaven working on our behalf. So, you know, when evil men die, you can thank Billy. He's still up there working for us. So we race across Florida, and we like we're hallucinating together. Like I remember we're in this boat and we're paddling, and I'm like, "Do you see what I see?" And he's like, "Yeah." It was like a circus, you know. I mean, you could smell, you know. And so it was just we just had this weird connection, you know.
Yeah, so you went to Bud's with your best friend, and then went to selection. Just to
shared hallucinations.
So it was heavy paddling. So Billy was incredible on a mountain bike. I was good rucking, you know, the paddling I was, you know, so we always looked for races that were a little bit more land based than water based. Yeah. But this one turned out to be a lot of paddling. So we're in a tandem paddling. So as I'm doing this, I'm getting sand in my ass crack. And it's the first time in my life I get hemorrhoids. I had no idea what they are.
Wait, right before you're going to
Yes. So I didn't know it because you're
That's
racing.
a war stopper.
Dude, you're racing and like the race is over and like I remember I get in the car and I clean up and like I get up and the seat is bloody and I'm like, what's happened? So like the sand, I literally tore my butthole to pieces, grinding in this.
you already did the physical to go to selection, so
Exactly. So
that was a joke.
So I don't know what to do. Okay, my butt's bleeding. Like down my legs bleeding still. So I go to selection, dude. I go to SFAS and I show up, and my biggest fear is
they're gonna find out
a med
drop.
They're
gonna kick you right out
because we're wearing those crazy stupid gray.
Yeah, I remember that.
Army. You know what I mean? Army PTs. So I bring feminine pads, maxi pads. So I got a maxi pad in my shorts and in my BDUs because I'm afraid my butt's gonna bleed through my pants, and they're gonna be like,
it's gonna look like you're in your period.
Yes,
I have so many jokes going through my mind right now.
So
I'm just
so dude, I show up because that's what I can just see it. You know what I mean? Like, hey Tiegs, what? Dude, get out of here.
Yeah.
So they do a layout when you first get there. You dump out all your stuff, and I've got a pack of feminine napkins sitting, and
those are masculine napkins.
Yeah. So they're going through all the stuff, and the SF cadre, he walks up to me, and he looks and he goes, "I thought I saw it all.
Yeah,
but this is a first."
She's like, "I like to party, dude."
He says, "Would you like to explain?" And I
said, I would not, sir.
I said, Sergeant, all I can tell you is my ass is bleeding so much I could feed a vampire family of 6 right now. And he goes, "Enough said," and moves on.
That's cool.
So
man.
I wore a feminine napkin in my BDUs and
for how many?
For about 5 days until my butt stopped bleeding.
So
it doesn't. Usually it goes way fast.
So you paddled across Florida. you became a woman and you made it through selection in like a 5-7 day span.
Beautiful.
Whatever, no big deal.
Again,
it's a coming of age tale.
When you look backwards and tell those stories, you're like, what the hell? But that that was it. That was the story. Yeah.
Like so much of that is like, we paddled across Florida. I became a woman. I went to selection. It's like The Hobbit. Like it's
dude.
Oh yeah, the
They're
In
back
Search of the
again.
Ring,
Yeah,
the Jeff
yeah.
Tiegs trilogy.
Yeah,
In Search of the
yeah.
Ring.
Yeah. So you go through. We were going to that was like ODA selection, right?
That was that. Yeah. That
Yeah.
was
So we were talking about.
Yeah, you're already on ODA. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
bounce off. Let's springboard off of ODA.
Yeah, back
let's
to
talk about Delta.
Okay,
This way, so we can get it in because we
so
do got to
Billy-
talk about Skull Game.
Again, Billy and I fought together again on target multi team stuff that we were doing. We go to selection together. Again, his story comes up because I had screwed up towards in selection on the 40 miler at the end, and I kind of stopped paying attention, and because I was like, oh, this is a straight shot all the way in, and I get to this intersection, and it's it's one of those where it's like 3 or 4 things to choose from, and they're all kind of like. I knew I needed to go in that general direction, and they were all like going in that general direction. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Oh man, I had a lapse of focus. I don't know.
40-mile ruck, no big deal.
Yeah,
it happens.
So I look down on the ground because I'm feeling sorry for myself, and I look down at the ground, and I see Billy's footprints because he had freakishly small feet. He probably had like a size 8 or something, but he's like 6'2". He had small.
A lot of good runners are built like that. Big tall guys with small feet.
Yeah. And again, I raced with him so much. I knew his pattern of how his boot. You know what I mean? So I look down and I see Billy's footprints. He was ahead of me because he had started ahead of me, and I was like,
"That's awesome.
It's that way." And sure enough, it was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you made it through. You got selected.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah. And then sure enough, he was waiting for me.
Because he was 6'2" and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
5.
So then,
See my footprints, bro.
Yeah. Did you tell him?
Yeah. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did. It's in the book. And then, so we go to selection together. We go to the unit together in 05 to start the operator training course. And I get my leg broken in doing jujitsu in OTC. So I had to do like a restart. So that was kind of where we ended up separating. He went to C, I went to A. And then I spent the better part of a decade there. Officers I went out to the War College in Rhode Island, had a couple of different kind of assignments, kind of working around.
Yeah, officers get moved around. They have to go they got to do all kinds of special things and stuff like that they got to keep on track. So it's bad because, like he said, officers, team leaders, they don't get to spend as much time on an ODA. So if they get to be there for 4 years, that's a long time for an officer. And same, like most of the guys I knew when we were at Delta, like good officers, and were like, "Hey man, great guy." And we're like, "Oh, he has to leave." And I was like, "Man, it feels like he just got here, dude."
Yeah,
but they always got to do something because they have to go do staff time and all the things they got to do to stay.
But we knew enough by now. Okay, so we had the VPNs. You know what I mean? So even when I was at grad school or I was doing other things, I was on so again, that was something that the unit did well. It's like you weren't assigned to us anymore, but you were. You were the eyes and ears, and you know what I mean? So they did a really good job of creating this network of people wherever you were to kind of keep feeding because you were already vetted. Why are we just going to
I remember my battalion XO when I was in the 82nd because I deployed to Kosovo in 99, and my battalion XO was a guy that came over from Delta. They sent him over there to do battalion time, and he was the greatest ever because when we deployed, the commander went ahead and he brought us all out, and it was the time that they issued us all the ammo like you were talking about. It's the first time they were like these are real grenades, this is the real stuff, like get ammo. And I remember some kid raised his hand and he's like, "Hey sir, like what do we do if we encounter somebody?" And I remember he had that, I know you know who this guy, I won't mention his name, starts with a W, but I know you know who it is. And I remember he just looked up like with the coolest look, like straight Tarantino style. And he looked at it and he goes, "If somebody gives you shit, you shoot them 3 times in the fucking face." And he's like, if whoever it is coming after anybody in this battalion, you shoot them 3 times in the fucking face. And I saw that kid's face go, like everybody got all happy. I was like, man, this guy's we're like fucking goosebumps. And everything was training up to there. I was like, man, this guy's talking about shooting people in the fucking face. Now it's game on, dude.
Yeah.
And he was a cool cat, dude. And I met him again years later, dude. And I was like, hey, man, I'll never forget this time you told somebody to shoot somebody in the face 3 fucking times, dude. And I was like, yeah, it changed the attitude. Everybody all of a sudden, because everybody was scared, and all of a sudden everybody was like, Yeah, things are gonna be all right. We got this guy helping us. You know?
But even again, watching you teach
Yeah.
over the last couple of days, like it seems dramatic, like shoot him in the face, but we really did shoot people
Yeah,
in the face. Like
yeah,
you shoot them right
It's
here.
not-
Like this is
yeah,
this
I
is
didn't
where
ask
you
for
shoot
it.
them. I mean, a couple in here is good, but
Yeah.
you really do shoot everyone
Yeah,
in the
but that's
face.
what
Like
that guy
it's
had
not-
learned, and we're like, hey man, this guy is telling it like it is. But all right, finally,
But also
It's not
the serious
dramatic.
answer,
It's
yeah.
just it is.
But
Like,
also the fact that you know that guy's going with you too.
That's what I mean.
It's
We
like-
felt
it's
good.
like-
We're like, hey man, we're with a guy who's a real fighter, man.
Yeah. But that like getting the goosebumps, like they were going to war kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like, ooh,
yeah.
this is what I signed up for. A lot of people signed up to do time in the army. There's a long time where a lot of people didn't deploy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then it's like
none of us had.
yeah, it's like being in the NFL and never stepping foot on the
Yeah,
field, right?
yeah.
So like, it was awesome. But so you were there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Did you retire from there, or did you go
I-
somewhere else and then?
I did. My last year, I was working special projects and and retired out of there in 2015.
So total, how many years did you do in the military?
I think it's 26 is what they ended up
Nice.
adding again because I was in reserves and all that kind of
Yeah,
crap.
yeah.
So,
So
I
when
think
they-
I think on my paperwork it says 26.
When they do that weird math.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Decimal math,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
point
So-
system, shit.
Yeah. So you got out.
Yep.
What was your next? So when everyone gets out, you have a mission. Like Matt started working here.
Yeah.
Like I also was threatened, so I started working here too. So what was the next thing that you did?
So as I was beginning to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, and part of it is this soul searching because you become this officer, right? And I'm a lieutenant colonel, and what's next? I only like the small unit. I don't want to be in charge of a bunch of dudes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like the
Pain in the ass.
small team stuff. Small
So
team
you
stuff.
retired as lieutenant
Colonel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like, what is it that really makes me tick? And it's manhunting, and that's what we did. And it's what I got really good at, like if for those of you that didn't have officers from the years of 2003 to 2000, 11, that weren't like targeteers and manhunters and putting together these packets and making sure that the ops and the intel were fused, I apologize because that's what our job was.
Yeah.
I mean, and even again, take Delta.
Yeah, it did
Dude,
very
like
well.
the NCOs, they had enough to do. Like theirs were the hard skills. Like they had to do everything with their hands and eyes, and it was up to us, the officers, to make sure the targets made sense.
What
the
big
network
army
was
call
being-
that? What they got? Coin or some shit like that? Like
Yeah,
what was?
coin. You're talking.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
counterinsurgency. You're talking about.
Yeah. What was
Coin
that?
operations.
Yeah. What's that? Is that what the? Is that kind of what we're getting into? Like what you're talking about? Is the,
He's talking about target development, and
Yeah.
that's what they do very well at those high level units, which means a lot of times you just get fed crap.
Yeah.
But at those high level units, they're developing their own targets. They're compiling their own intelligence, figuring out the best way to crack the code, and they get very, very good at it. And some of those guys are exceptionally good. Like they're doing it at the national level, and you think you know what's going on until you step in that room. And you're like, dude, this is so busy. I can't believe. I don't know how you wrap your fucking heads around it, man.
You'll see it tomorrow and Sunday.
Yeah.
So coin has a place, right? So coin is kind of if you look at coin on a timeline, it's a bit of a slow burn.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, when I was in SF, Delta would come in and like kick over the sand in the sandbox. Like you're there for a long time. We're like, dudes, why didn't you call? And then when my era of guys came in, we really tried to clean that up. And one of the things that I recognized is coin is kind of a slow burn. The targeting cycle takes days and weeks.
Yeah.
The CT, the counterterrorism targeting cycle, is 24 hours.
Yeah, it's fast.
So you've got this cycle that's spinning inside this. So you have to make sure you're really communicating with the other folks. Like, hey, I'm going to screw some stuff up in your battle space, but here's why, and let's try to maximize these effects. So I'm beginning to learn all that. So coin, counterinsurgency, counterterrorism, CT. I've created CTR, counter-trafficking.
Ooh.
So that's again, dude. I need OER bullets, right?
Yeah,
every
I like
officer needs an OER bullet. But one of the ways that I looked at it too, as I'm beginning to recognize, hey, this is what I do, this is what I like. Who's a new enemy to go after? Like I can't explain it any other way. God laid it on my heart to look at this idea of trafficking. I was familiar with it to a degree because we saw it in Asia, and again, we all knew what Al Qaeda.
I mean, I know about it. Like I think everybody out there knows about trafficking now because it's a common term now, but it wasn't. But we knew that there was some underground that moved people, but nobody was ever prepared to really dig into it. Jeff dug into it, and the first time he ever told me about it, I sat in one of his briefs, and I was just like, man, I had no idea it was as bad. It's 10 times worse
here
than I
in the
thought it was.
U.S.
Yeah.
right in the
US. That's what blew my mind.
So that like people that really was brought to the forefront, especially lately. Like I think there was that big thing about that movie, The Sound of Freedom,
Yeah.
and that kind of exposed a lot.
But even before then, Epstein, dude. Epstein brought a lot of
Is more of the flavor of what we're dealing with.
What we're seeing here. And I'm like, I was like, because I had heard about it from him, and then I watched the Jeffrey Epstein thing, and I was like, fuck, that's everything he talked about. That guy literally played the game like he was doing it, and he was doing it. And when you successfully, unfortunately,
when you look at the space, so again, even if you remember when you were in, you took anti-terrorism training. Do you remember that thing? Yeah. It's a computer simulation. You write it, click. Yeah. I'm anti-terrorism qualified.
Yeah.
Well, we had to do that too, but I was a counterterrorism guy. Like the whole military needs to understand anti-terrorism. Again, when you look at these definitions, it's how do you make yourself a difficult target? That's anti-terrorism. Recognizing it when you see them, terror indicators. But to be a counter-terror operator, that's a very specific responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's how I differentiate Skull Games. We're not an anti-trafficking organization. We're a counter-trafficking organization. We do raise awareness and things like that. Yeah. But again, my mom can do that.
Yeah.
We're targeters. We target.
Yeah, they're in the trenches. They're going after them. Yeah.
So all of this stuff that we've discussed, I've been trying to translate into this space. And there is a place for operators. There's a place for guys like us because we have leadership and we understand how to build teams, but the actual skill of an analyst and these enablers, that's who we're really looking for. So that group of people that you see out there, I don't know, what is it, 50% women?
Yeah, you know
what I mean, but
probably 50-50.
They're intelligence analysts.
So they've been here for what? Yesterday, today,
and then tomorrow we hunt. So it's Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 5. We have cities across the country that we have cops standing by to take leads from us. So we already have the deck stacked. So we've got a bunch of women identified that are being sold online who we think are being trafficked. So we will hand all those start points
in America
to the team. And that team will start to develop these packages. Sometimes it's a dead end, and sometimes
usually when I explain it, I oversimplify it. I say it's everything up until Chris Hansen walks in. They're taking care of all that
Hold
stuff.
on. When did you start doing this? How long have you been doing this now?
I started before I got out. In 2015, I tested out some of these processes while I was still in uniform, just as like, hey, is this going to work? So 10 years is how long I've been working it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
Funding is by far the most difficult thing. And again, this is the problem. We're lost in the noise.
Yeah.
We're like what we're doing is straight up Delta Force shit.
Yep.
But not banging on doors.
Yeah,
we're not shooting pimps in the face. We're ensuring that our host nation partners, which is American law enforcement, is at the right place at the right time with the right information to make the arrest. And what that arrest does is it provides a path to freedom for this victim. We identify the victim first because she's the thing that's the outward face. Yeah. This is the woman for sale. This is her picture. This is her fake name. Once you identify who she is using open source intel on the internet, we are able to find out who her potential trafficker is and putting that together for cops.
So do you think that, especially right now, like this might not be a question, but apparently the border's wide open.
Yeah.
Is that making it?
No, because
I wish it was that simple, man.
Yeah, I wish it was. And here's the thing about the border. And I've gone upstream. So I crossed the border. We went upstream. I didn't cross the Darien Gap. We went to the Darien Gap and hung out there and then went into Colombia. So I followed that thing all the way upstream to check it out.
Yeah.
The women that are coming across the border are being raped multiple times. I just saw some. It's like almost 100% of the women are being. They know it though.
Yeah.
When they leave, I'm not.
We
saying,
heard that. Yeah.
When
they know it's going to happen.
When they leave, whatever, they know they're paying with their bodies. So the amount of abuse that they're going through to get here is catastrophic. But once they get here, they're not the market. They're not the market because people buy and this is hard for people to hear. You have to look at this as a business. What's being sold? And it's a fantasy, and what goes for the most amount of money. So people buy of like kind. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like white guy wants a white girl, black guy wants a black girl, Asian guy wants but you know what's ubiquitous is the white girl. The white girl goes for more money. She's always part of the stable. So you're going to have black, Asian, Hispanic. You're going to have these girls, but that woman who came across the border, she's not worth enough money for resale.
So they're going for women that are already here.
They're already here. and they're just luring them and pulling them over.
Man, that shit's so hard to hear, dude. Like, honestly, it's like, I get it. There's good people doing good things, but when you think about it in that context and you really start to talk about the value of a human and have to deal with those dark subjects, man, I don't envy you, but I'm glad somebody's out there doing something about it, because that just drives me nuts. Being a father of a daughter, or just
100%.
being a fucking human, dude. It's hard to hear that shit.
And
dude.
I don't think you know, a couple of those women out there, they're survivors of trafficking.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Are these ladies here? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't, because you guys were in those classes.
Yeah, we're in
interacting
different
with
cells.
anybody.
But he introduced me to some before, and that was one of the most eye-opening things for me. Yeah.
2 of the women out there were sold for years. And so when they get to that point, we call them survivors, right? So they're survivors, and then you get to this point of thriving. So these survivors, they've got PTSD like crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Plus that sexual abuse is really, really hard to shake. You know.
Yeah.
So they're survivors and thrivers, and then we invite them to be hunters with us. So now these women hunt.
Get some empowerment in there.
Oh.
Get
So
the fucking
on
mojo
our
back,
team,
man.
it'll be an intel person, it'll be a cop, it'll be a survivor, and especially where they're from. So the woman from Tampa, the woman from Kansas City, the woman from Stockton, like she already knows half the players. So we've got these world-class intel analysts that can spend hours trying to figure out who the trafficker is, or you just ask one of our survivor hunters.
She's like,
oh. Yeah, that's
right there.
That's Frankie Mac's girl or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even the tattoos and all these things that we don't understand, they just understand that space.
Yeah, they had a lady out there. That was the most interesting conversation. You got somebody on the team that's a tattoo analyst.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I could spend days talking to her.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you think about these? She looked at him. She goes, yeah, you got mommy issues. No, I'm just kidding. But that's what I'm saying. That team is so diverse. There's people with personalities. Like, I would have never thought to go that way. But that's what he's talking about. Is like, you've got somebody, a project guy who said, hey man, I can see the value of that, and assembles a tremendous team, and they're coming at it from every angle, and there's no escaping. I'm glad to hear that there's good, talented people on that team, but it sucks that you got to have that kind of talent to even make a dent in this kind of.
But it's what Delta is. That's what people don't understand.
Precisely,
like
right,
when people think of Delta, they think of you two. I'm probably too small even for them to think of me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
They think of the operator.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, we've got mad scientists.
That's
like we've got the dork who's like derp, with the pencils, but he's figuring out
that's the truth.
How to triangulate and build this and
the
drones and
craziest shit I ever
just
saw.
Like,
I
just
saw
like
there,
medicine. Dude, how much of the medical advancements were unique?
Yeah, started
medics,
there. Yeah, started there and
so
went from there. Yeah.
Of course, I love the operator and I miss the operator, but there isn't a place in America for the operator to kick a door down and shoot a guy.
I also said that the whole time. Like, the most impressive thing I ever saw from any special missions unit was not like kicking in doors and blowing things up and stuff. That's the crescendo to a lot of work that went into that.
And no one's gonna see it.
Nobody will ever see it. Nobody will ever appreciate it. It just, like I say, for the guys who got Bin Laden, they were in there on the ground for such a short time, it was over. But some poor bastard had to live there for months. Casing, developing, doing all that
wiping
stuff.
his ass with a hand.
And when all's done and said and done, and the helicopter flies away with all the heroes on it, that guy's got to sneak out. He's still there, and he's got to figure out a way to get out without getting ID'd as part of the program. That is the real special operator. That's the hard job, dude.
Please swing by this weekend. Come in the afternoons, because you'll see the churn, and that's who those people are. Like, they're the quiet heroes, and that's what I love about this. I can't pay them. I literally can't pay them. We don't have the money to pay them. They volunteer their own time. So we hunt every single day all over the country. And then once a quarter, we come together. This is one of our task force operations. Usually we have about 80 to 100 people. We kept it small for this. So there's about 40 folks here. But this is a way to give back. So like for you, for what Matt and Yako and you guys are pouring into them, that's just my way of saying thanks.
That's our pleasure, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's awesome having them.
You got to come by tomorrow and see the churn, and you'll see these stories of these poor women.
I'll definitely be
girls.
by.
Yeah. When these guys are going to put together stuff, they're going to hand it over to the authorities. Those are the guys that go run the actual raids, and hopefully they bring some guys to justice. Even if they get one of these pieces of shit off the street, man, it'd be worth everything that we put into it, man. Like, I wholeheartedly believe in how good this program is. We're running a seminar tonight that we set up to give back, because I want everybody to hear the same thing that I heard from you the first time I ever had your brief, and it was eye-opening because it changed the way I looked at things. It changed the way I parented. It changed everything. So if you get an opportunity to get invested, find out, because Skull Games does offer that type of training and kind of insights on their website. Go to their website and check it out. Trust me, you'll be a better parent. You'll be a better person, a better American once you get involved and understand what's really going on in the background. Don't just turn a blind eye to it. I think it's important, but it makes me feel good that it's a guy from the Brotherhood doing it out here and getting it done, and to know that like all that stuff, because like you said, it goes all the way back to that drill sergeant that puts you in the right place at the right time, and all built to this.
Yeah.
And like that's the way you pay that guy back is by continuing to crush it, and not accepting second best and taking these dirt bags off the street, man. That's awesome, dude.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where you have all this training that the government paid for, and then now you're applying it into a different aspect of your life. This just
it's
not like me who's just wasting it.
You're
playing video games.
Well, what's funny too is one of the women that's visiting, she's here for the first time, and she's like, how did you guys put this together? And you almost feel guilty because that, again, a good officer just puts it together.
Yeah.
And then go.
Yeah, let it go.
So I kind of, even with Skull Games, I kind of feel silly because it's like, there really isn't much for me to do. My job is to raise money, which is, I'm failing at huge, you know. But it's like we've put it together and they just go.
Yeah. So where can people find a place to donate?
Yep, skullgames.io. So
.io.
skullgames.org and everything will get you there. But skullgames.io is our website. There's a donate page that's there, and we can put this in the notes. We have two classes: the Protect Your Family course, and then the leadership course. Which again, Tim. We made a leadership course with Sheepdog that Tim gave to me to offer to folks. So I think it's SKGTF 2024 is the coupon for a free code. I'll double check that, but please put that in the notes. Obviously, if you guys access it and want to send us money, great. Otherwise, consider it a gift. It's like a 6-hour course on the Protect Your Family. You hear from a survivor, and then it's mostly me. And then same with the leadership course. You'll hear some of these same stories we discussed, but my pleasure.
Do you guys have socials? Do you have Instagram?
We do. Our biggie really is LinkedIn with that professional. So where we're having success is corporate partnerships. Yeah. So because we rely heavily on tech with machine learning and AI and facial recognition, all of those things. That's our number one platform is LinkedIn, but we're on Instagram and Facebook if people want to check us out.
So I know that we're going to release this podcast in a few weeks. Matt, we're going to live stream it tonight. Is it going to be on YouTube? Right. Because YouTube's forever. So if you can't, for some reason you can't, today's the 19th. Let's say you can't tune in tonight. It will be on the internet. It will.
It'll be in the Sheepdog Response YouTube page. You can find it. You'll be able to see it.
We'll make sure that we put those websites on there so that people can donate. And
what's crazy, you're going to hear. So tonight you're going to hear us talk about the crime. You're going to hear from one or both of our survivors, and they're going to tell some of their story. And then I don't know if you know this. One of the ladies last night was propositioned. Her Uber driver tried to lure her in to his little. He came all the way in to Sheepdog. She came to Jits last night, and we looked.
The lady who came to jiu-jitsu last night.
Yeah. Her Uber driver came in. Were you there?
No, I wasn't here, but I heard about it. I was talking to her about it today.
Yeah, and we looked the guy up. He's wanted for DV. He's wanted for all sorts of crimes. He was an Uber driver, and when she came in to sign in, he was standing there over her shoulder, and so all these things. And dude, what's terrible is she keeps beating herself up because you just talked about SA.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. But it's like you just have to practice it. So even last night, an Uber driver
made it in. Yeah. So the thing about that too, though, is like she'll never forget that now, though.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that she made it safe. Everything was okay. But like she'll never forget it. That'll never happen again.
Yeah.
And it's a good story to like help people. Like she, it's one of those things.
Right here in Cedar Park.
Yep.
Yeah, it's bananas.
All right, I think we ought to wrap it up.
Yep.
Jeff, it's always awesome being with you, man. I love being with you. I love being it's like being with the Brotherhood again.
Yeah,
so here. I love it. It's awesome to be able to get to talk to you here. Pat, anything you want to say?
So thanks for teaching Heroes Jiu-Jitsu
Oh, dude,
today.
that was a blast.
So again, check out Skull Games. Donate money. Like it's a big deal. Again, I run a nonprofit, and I know how hard it is to get donations.
Yeah.
So
and if you're in the corporate sector, like get a hold of Jeff, get him out. awesome briefer. He can put together presentations and everything, and get companies involved and everything, because we all need to get more deeply involved with this, especially if you're a parent, church groups, all those people. Like, that's the kind of stuff you want. It's great information for the community, and he's always willing to provide it. And thanks, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Totally a blast.